So
Yeah,
there.
we are. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of organizers of Indus Water System webinar series, I am Benazir Iqbal from National Center of Excellence in Geology, University of Peshawar. Welcome you all to the 11th talk of Indus River System webinar series. This webinar is jointly organized by a National Center of Excellence in Geology, University of Peshawar, Pakistan, Geological Survey of Pakistan, Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and National Center of GIS and Space Application in Geosciences, Islamabad, Pakistan. So, this webinar series of virtual seminars covers a range of topics related to water resources of Indus River system, climate change, and cryosphere. This webinar targeted researchers, organizations, practitioners, and postgraduate students involved in water-related activities. So, this webinar is comprised of 1 hour with 40 minutes of talk and 20 minutes of question and answer session. So today is the 11th talk of webinar series by Dr. Imran Saqib Khalid, who is director at Worldwide Fund for Nature of Pakistan. Um, Dr. Imran Saqib Khalid is a climate and sustainability thought leader with over 20 years of wide-ranging experience across academic, nonprofit, governmental, and private sectors. Currently, he is serving as a Director Governance and Policy at the Worldwide Fund for Nature, Pakistan. His work focuses on regions and communities most vulnerable to environmental degradation, climate change. Um, he is a Fulbright scholar, holds a PhD in environmental and natural resources policy from State University of New York. So we are honored to have you, Dr. Imran Saqib Khalid. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank Dr. Qasim Jan, who reached out at the beginning a few months back, and when this program was being developed, and asked me to come and join. So really appreciate that. Thank you to the organizers. I think it has been a wonderful set of discussions that have happened over the past couple of months in regard to water, the Indus Basin, as well as collective needs. I'll be talking about the Australia-Pakistan Water Security Initiative. It's a project that we've just embarked on.
Recording start.
May I request everyone to kindly mute themselves so that any kind of echo does not. Okay, thank you. Um, So I'll be talking about the Australia-Pakistan Water Security Initiative, which is a project that we've embarked on at the WWF here in Islamabad. But before I do that, let me just highlight some of the key water issues that to me are usually ignored. So in Pakistan, when we talk about water, water is we're mainly talking about the quantity of water. The discussion always inevitably turns to mega dams. There is little discussion on how the water that is available to us is being utilized or used. Um, for example, we do not discuss how 90% of our water goes towards agriculture, and that too the sugarcane crop, for example, or the cotton crop. Now, this is, or rice for that matter. These are agricultural commodities that consume lots and lots of water and then leave little for the urban areas, leave little out there for those who are more vulnerable. And within that realm, you've got powerful landowners who have access to water year round. If you are at the tail end of a canal, for example, then you do not. So it's an equity and justice issue. Now, people who do not have water, what do? They turn to groundwater. And we know that groundwater reservoirs across South Asia are being depleted significantly and quickly. These are our water reserves, and unfortunately, due to the governance issues when it comes to water, we're going to be facing water scarcity when it comes to our groundwater. We're not water scarce as per se when it comes to the general availability of water in our country. It's pretty much been the same since independence. What the issue here is that we are water stressed. That means those of us who are able to get water, they're able to get water through various means, and those of us who are not find it very, very difficult. So having said this, I would like to talk about water in the context of urban areas in Pakistan. The Australia-Pakistan Water Security Initiative aims to strengthen cooperation between Australia and Pakistan on urban water resource management by implementing what is known as the water-sensitive cities vision for the country. So this is something that Australia has been highlighting, but it's already been also being highlighted by countries such as China, where it's known as the sponge cities concept, or in the UK or in Europe. It's about rethinking our association with water, and I'll come to that quickly. The donor is the Australian government. WWF, although it's the project grantee, we're working with partners in Australia as well as in Pakistan. So IWMI is one of our partners here in the country. And this project will last from 2021 through 2025. So we're just at the start of this project. And if any of the colleagues or participants here want to visit these sites, we'll be happy to take you there and show you some of the things that we're doing. Okay, there's a picture in front of you. I hope everyone can see it. This is in a locality called Farage Town in Islamabad. Our project sites under the Australia-Pakistan Water Security Initiative are based in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. One site is in Islamabad, one is in Rawalpindi. This is the Farage Town site in Islamabad. This picture was taken last summer. What you see here is a water tanker. On that water tanker, it says CDA number 26. So CDA is the Capital Development Authority. Now, these tankers go to areas where there is no water provisioning. There are no water supply lines. And you have these tankers go into these communities. They come in at 9 or 10 a.m. and it's the women who line up. You don't see any men here, right? What you see here are primarily women, some children, and what you're seeing here is that there are no men who are participating in this. It's because men have gone out to work, and the women who are at the home, along with the children, are responsible for going out there, standing in lines, standing in queues, and accessing water. So is this an equity and justice issue? Perhaps to me, who gets his water on a regular basis, being supplied to his home, to his office, it's not an issue, but it's an equity and justice issue when it comes to individuals who have to spend significant amount of time waiting in queues to access water. This is the water they're going to be drinking. If they're not able to have any other means, perhaps they'll even use it for washing, but we don't know what the quality of the water is. If somebody is ill at the home and they're not able to go out and access that water, they'll probably, stay without water for that particular day. So these are some of the things that we think about. And this is the case not only in Islamabad, but across the country. Increasingly, with the growing population, growing urbanization, our water governance structures haven't kept up with the demands and the needs of the communities. They've kept up with the needs of our golf courses, by the way. So, if Islamabad has a couple of golf courses, Rawalpindi too, and they're quite green and they have no problem accessing the water. So there's that. There's that. So what is a water sensitive city? It is livable, it is resilient, it is sustainable, it is productive. What we want to focus on is the integrated water cycle. And in doing so, ensure that the waterways are safe and clean. Our waterways passing through Islamabad are waste dumps. Our solid waste is dumped into this natural stream called Nala Lai. The Lai passes through Islamabad, comes through the mountains, the hills, Margala Hills, passes through Islamabad. It collects the municipal wastewater from the very wealthy E7 and F7 sectors. It collects the waste, solid waste dumped into it, and then moves on to Rawalpindi, where the more poor people live. In Dhokhasu, for example, who bear the brunt of the contaminated flows. Reduced flood risk. That's another component of a water sensitive city. Last year, those of us in Islamabad will remember the E11 sector getting flooded. And it was said that it had gotten flooded because we had received a lot more rain than normal. In fact, the rain was quite regular. I mean, there was nothing abnormal about the rain that we received during the monsoon. It was just that the waterways had been encroached by these large buildings and housing schemes in such a way that it had constricted the water that could flow through that particular area. And when you do that, you increase the risk of floods. And that is what happened there. So what we're essentially trying to do is to use up every bit of land that is available to us to urbanize and make money. Not in the productive sense that the water sensitive city talks about, but in a way that is quite degrading for the city as well as those of us who are most vulnerable. A water-sensitive city also tries to create public spaces that harvest clean and recycle water. If you think about it, this is what our forefathers, the earlier generations, a couple of 100 years back, this is the environment that they lived in. We did not have urbanization in the way that we have now. I think people, generations who came before us understood the value of water and its association with the human dimensions. Unfortunately, we have forgotten that, which is why even developed cities, so-called developed cities, so-called planned cities, such as Islamabad, are facing a crisis. When we talk about the transition of the city from a water supply city to a water sensitive city, we've got an interesting chart here that I'll just go through. This is what we need to traverse. We need to go from a water supply city, a sewer city, a drain city, and then move on to a holistic water sensitive city. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, most of our cities are water supply cities, if that. So if you go back to the early 19th century, when the civil engineering was being developed and we were trying to provide water to the communities, this is where we are at. The water pipelines were being laid. And then by mid to late 19th century, people started to find that, look, we were having the diseases, health problems because of our inability to manage our wastewater. And then you had the sewer city come in. And then as the growth in urban areas came in connection with the natural extreme weather events. There were floods. We wanted to drain them out. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we haven't moved past the water supply, access, and security. We've got a sewered city now. There are towns who are sewered, but having a sewered city is not the answer. So, sewered city means that you're taking your waste away and then you're dumping it elsewhere without treatment. In Pakistan, only 1% of our wastewater is treated. The government figures are 7%. I say 1%, but nobody knows. I mean, it's sometimes the wastewater treatment plants are working. Most of the time, they're not. There are only a few to talk about. So even if you take up these figures of 7% wastewater being treated, this is quite horrible. And all of that wastewater ends up in waterways and wetlands and communities who are quite vulnerable to the effects of polluted water. So essentially, what we are trying to do is to enhance environmental protection, or this is what we need to do to limit our reliance on natural resources and to use them in a holistic manner, so that there is intergenerational equity. That means the benefits that one generation is taking up from the natural resource do get transferred to future generations. And then at the same time, we do it in such a way that we are able to address the challenges posed by climate change, for example. So Pakistan is one of the most affected countries when it comes to climate change. There's a German Watch Institute based out of Berlin, which ranks countries on how they're affected. And Pakistan regularly ranks in the top 10. I think last year we were number 5. And that's because of how we are being impacted by glacial lake outburst floods, heat waves, riverine flooding, or the impact on food security, et cetera, et cetera. So as we move forward, we'll really have to reconsider the way we've been talking about water generally and particularly in regard to our urbanscapes. So quickly, again, we've got 2 sites in Islamabad and Rawalpindi that we're trying to provide access to safe water and sanitation. It's a tough ask. I'll tell you why. We'll show some pictures. We need to enhance resilience to climate change and other water-related shocks, and enhance the capacity and awareness of key stakeholders on urban water management. When it comes to climate change and when it comes to water management, even though it says we need to enhance their capacity and awareness, the key stakeholders, I think, in my mind, are the communities. And if you go there, they know more about water than any of the experts. It's because they deal with the impacts of poor governance. They deal with the impacts of mismanagement. A lady who might not be that well educated, but who is in her home, can tell you more about what water means to her than a PhD. It's because of her association with water. She understands what the needs are. And unfortunately, as decision makers, as policy makers, we have not been able to make that connection. And the day we do, we'll find that a lot of these problems that we're facing will automatically get addressed. The photograph now in front of you, it's the Farage Town site in Islamabad. This is actually CDA, Capital Development Authority land, and as you can see, this is quite well planned. It's been the parcels of land are equally distributed. The spaces that you see in between, the empty spaces, there are parks, playgrounds. So it's well developed. in the sense it's well planned, in the sense that, or fairly well planned as compared to the other site, in that the CDA was involved. But as you move down and go into these communities, you'll find that obviously there is no water supply, and these parks have been turned into waste dumps. So because solid waste does not get picked up, these empty sites, instead of being playgrounds for children as they were intended to be, are sites for solid waste, and this leads to health issues. The water being pooling up in different places leads to the dengue virus, and that sort of a thing. So this is an issue that's quite there, and there are about the population size here is about 21,000, and what we're trying to do here is to provide clean drinking water. There is no water supply system. So in order to get a foothold into the community, we've been discussing with the community members on a regular basis as to how to do it. And we've decided to put up 2 filtration plants, which will rely on groundwater. And they will help meet the needs of the community. And this is a tricky situation. This was a difficult decision to make, because groundwater is depleting in a number of areas. Number one, it's not accessible, but where it is, it's depleting. So although we're putting in groundwater wells, we're also putting in recharge wells so as to replenish the water. So Islamabad does get a fairly good amount of rain, especially during the monsoon season. And a lot of that gets, turns into runoff and moves out of this area. But in the coming years, we'll be devising a plan to recharge the wells that we are setting up, and hopefully we'll be able to monitor them and see whether there is any depletion or not. So stay tuned. Please keep in touch, and we'll try and update you. Because if the ground level continues to go down, then this won't be a sustainable solution. The other site that we have is Jamestown in Rawalpindi. It's on Adiala Road, moving out towards Adiala Jail. This is on the outskirts of Rawalpindi city. And as you can see, this is a very congested sort of development. This is the minority community. A lot of them are working as waste in the waste management sector, and here empty spaces are very, we could not find an empty space. So as we were thinking about developing a filtration plant and setting that up, we couldn't. We had difficulty finding empty spaces, and we had to talk to the community and eventually decide on those filtration plants. So we are relying on groundwater and using a filtration plant, and then whereby people can come and access clean drinking water. That's the number one thing here and in Farage Town. The second thing what we've started to do, and I'll show some pictures there, is that we've installed rainwater harvesting systems, and we'll be installing. We're going to be installing about 500 rainwater harvesting structures in Farage Town this year, and about the same number in Jamestown. This requires a clean roof, and then you have a container where the water collects after the rain, and the community can use it. It's obviously not a year-round solution, because there are periods when there is no rain in Islamabad and Rawalpindi. But at least for 4 to 6 months, I think we can develop a system whereby the communities, the stress that the community is facing can be reduced. So as we were beginning to decide which sites to choose, which communities to choose for our project, we were going across Rawalpindi and Islamabad. And we came across a site in Rawalpindi that was trying to access water from a well. So we saw that the homes in that particular community had pipes that were coming out and going down the small lanes and ending, and they ended up here, and we followed that. And there are about a dozen or so pipes that come in, and these are pipes that lead to individual homes. This is how we are accessing our water. So I've talked about the CDA water tankers, but if you're a little bit better off and you can invest some money in the pipes and you've got a source close to your home, then you can develop this contraptment, and then that can take water directly to your home. So I just wanted to highlight this. This is a picture of me at a site in Rawalpindi. So there were about 10 or 12 tankers such as this lined up, and they get their water from a groundwater source opposite Bahria Town, if you know what I'm talking about, and particularly Phase 8. This is right next to Sama River. So there's a river that passes by, so perhaps that's why the groundwater is replenished there. And that's where these tankers come in, fill up their water, and then they go into these communities across Rawalpindi. One thing to highlight here is that the community members, as we talked to them, they said that nearly half their wages are spent on accessing water. So imagine that half of your earnings are going for water alone. That leaves the households in a very, very precarious situation. Our filtration plants are nearly done. So we've set up one in Jamestown, and this is one in Farage Town. We're going to be doing some tests, and we hope that within a month these will be operational. And then what's going to happen is that the community members will come here, they'll line up. There will be a certain number of hours in a day when the water will be available. There will, and they'll be able to access it. We'll have at the back of this place, there's a media where water comes in. It's treated, and then it's provided through the taps. It's still being developed. One thing that we did try to do is to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. It's accessible to the elderly. It's accessible to people in a wheelchair. So we've done that, tried to develop this, and this is something that we usually don't see, but we've done that here. So I think we've talked about it. Water sensitive cities, best management practices include protecting the natural systems, protecting the water quality, recharging groundwater zones, minimizing wastewater generation, reducing pollutant and contaminant sources, reducing environmental impact of high dense urban development. So all of these best management practices are there, and then they've, in one way or another, they've been highlighted in reports in Pakistan for many, many years, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to implement them. A couple of slides on what water sensitive interventions might look like, and these are some pictures from across the world. These are, I think, of Australian origin. Whereby we're talking about rain gardens, so excess water that you have that might otherwise turn into runoff from paved structures. You try and develop natural solutions so that the water is able to seep into the ground through porous pavements or through swales and buffer strips. As we move forward in this project, and once we've done the initial work, whether we setting up these filtration plants so that people have access to water which they need right now, then we'll turn to such interventions. It will be difficult. It will be interesting to see how we can translate this into the on-ground situations, particularly in Jamestown. But this is something that's important. In Jamestown, we saw that waste management is a major problem. The wastewater from the homes is being let out in their front yards, and so that has consequences for rain gardens as well as recharge wells, because that if you have a recharge well close by, that's going to get polluted. So we'll be doing a lot of discussion with the community and try and see how we can address that problem as well. So green roofs is another one. We don't see that. This is, I think the Comstock building in Islamabad is the only one that I've seen that has a nice green roof. I'm not really sure what the state of that is nowadays, but this is something that we in Pakistan can definitely use. And then rainwater harvesting structures, they're very, very similar. And so the ones that we are installing are very similar to the ones that that is being shown here. If you've got space, and if you've got if your community is close to an empty space, then perhaps having constructed wetlands could be helpful in terms of treating your municipal wastewater. Given the fact that the city does not provide for that, I think using nature-based solutions to address that problem is the way forward. It's a decentralized mechanism, particularly for cash-starved economies such as Pakistan. I think we really need to look into this and to see that, yeah, we've been talking about water, and we talk about access to water and the amount of water that's in the Indus Basin, for example, but we rarely talk about the quality of water. So one thing that we've been doing, we've got a wonderful team. We've got about 8 young individuals. I'm not young, so that I'm not a part of that, who are constantly in touch with the community. So we've got engineers, we've got social mobilizers, we've got project managers who work with the community as well as other stakeholders to ensure that our interventions are as holistic as they can be under the circumstances. So here we are discussing some of the initiatives with the community members and gaining their consent. This meeting is happening in a church at the Jamestown location. And the very first question, and the question that they were asking again and again was, well, now you're here, people have been here before, when are we going to see things on the ground? We held such meetings and we did a number of visits. So it took us about 6 months before we were able to start putting in the rainwater harvesting systems, start putting in the filtration plant. And the communities were definitely getting jittery. They wanted to know why there hasn't been much progress. And so what we tried to do was to ensure them that, look, we're here for the long haul. We'll work with you and we'll ensure that at least some of your water needs are addressed. And this was done through constant and regular interaction with the community members. We've set up community-based organizations. We've set up community-based organizations at the street level as well, because as we move forward, what we'd like to see is the communities take ownership of these projects. WWF is here now, it will go away after 5 years. But then what? What if the rainwater harvesting systems fall into disarray? What if the filtration plants are not working? They'll need to be able to mobilize resources to address those challenges. This is a picture showing an empty yard that's full of waste. This is a rainwater harvesting structure that's been set up. The pipes going up to the roof. And when we had a little rain, we saw that the water had started to come in, and people. The mechanism is such that the water, when it initially comes through, it goes into a different chamber. The dust settles in there, and then that will ensure that any of the dust that was on the roof is cleared up, and then the water starts to come in and fill the main chamber. And we understand that some people were even able to utilize this for their home use, even take baths. So they were very happy that now at least there is some provision of water and they can at least utilize this. Challenges moving forward, or in general, investment. How do we access funds to provide communities with these? These aren't innovations. I mean, a lot of this is quite basic in nature, but it's just that these community members do not have the funds on their own. As I said, they're spending 50% of their income, a lot of them, on water alone. So it's pretty difficult to ask them to invest in a structure, a rainwater harvesting structure that amounts to 400, 500 US dollars. Policy level integration, right? Again, this is what I've been talking about. How do we ensure that our policies, we've got a water policy, we've got a drinking water policy. We've had these for a number of years, but we've got health related policies, we've got a climate change policy. Are they talking to each other? Are they talking, are the governance mechanisms really addressing the needs of the communities, or are these policies just for the sake of developing a policy? Awareness and sensitization of communities for ownership. Now, that will be important to ensure that, as I said, they can take this up moving forward and truly own this initiative. Hence, we've tried to involve them at each step of decision making. So we've been involving the communities, we've been involving CDA, the Rawalpindi Development Authority. So these are governmental entities. Next, what we are hoping to do is to, once we've got this set up, we'll be engaging with the Pakistan Council for Research in Water Resources, which is a think tank, right? And they've been doing things vis-a-vis water recharge, and try and see how we can connect with them, how we can connect with universities, for example, to see whether this is a demonstration project, whether this demonstration project can be scaled up. Nature-based solutions is the way forward. I think this is something that WWF has really been focusing on. Since we didn't have the time, I could not talk about it, but there's another project that's coming up that our team in Lahore is leading, and that's the Recharge Pakistan program, right? So that's the flooding that happens, floodwaters that come down the Rutkoi, the hill torrents in Dera Ghazi Khan and Dera Ismail Khan. And the amount of damage that did in 2010 led us to think about developing a project around our wetlands, whereby that water can be stored and could not only help alleviate any potential for risks for the communities, but also to lessen the flow of water moving downwards, and then also to help recharge the groundwater. And address some of the ecosystem challenges that are posed there. So that is something that we've taken up, and WWF is currently working on a project to submit a grant to, and so we submitted a concept note. It's been approved by GCF, and now we're working on a proposal that will be submitted later this year for a GCF grant. That's going to be a mega grant that will hopefully be added to by the government. So hopefully that's going to be around 50 million. We'll hope that the government comes up with a similar fund, and that's a large-scale project. Just thought I'd highlight that, because nature-based solutions is the way forward, and in Pakistan there's a lot of potential. I'll just stop here and look forward to any questions that you might have. I hope you found this interesting, and as I said before, we'll be very happy to take anyone to the and have them visit these sites if you're in Islamabad and or Pindi and are interested. I am here. My colleague Shuja Haider Rizvi, he's the project manager. He's also here. We can answer any of your questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. It was such a nice talk and such informative. Now the floor is open for a question. I think we have a first question from Puram Khan. Puram Khan, please unmute your mic and you can ask your question.
Come on. G, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. You can ask your question. Please
Okay.
briefly introduce yourself
Doctor,
and then ask your question.
yeah. G, Doctor, thank you very much for a very wonderful talk. And my name is Kuram Khan. I'm from Pakistan Army Corps of Engineers. And you talked about a little bit about the golf courses, which was sarcasm, and I fully agree and support you in that. So coming on to the point, I'm very happy actually. I'm graduate from UW Madison, and I've worked in development of wetlands, and I've been faculty in NUST. And my emphasis was using nature-based solutions for clean the water. So I'm really happy on this talk. So my only point is, this is the 11th talk in the series, and you are the first person who has talked about the wetlands. And I would say you must include that in your projects. And I'm available in Islamabad, and anytime I would definitely in person contact you, and we should move ahead on that. And we have a artificially made wetland in Nust, and that is available for visit for anything. And we are already doing some cleaning of sewage, doing that wetland. And my work was using macrophytes for cleaning the water, and even sediment transport control of sediment dynamics, erosion and deposition. So wonderful talk, and I'm very happy. And inshallah, I will contact you in private as well. Thank you, sir. It was rather a comment, not a question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to put my email in the chat box, and please feel free to write. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have another question from one of our organizers, Bob. Please, you can ask.
Yeah, thank you very much, Imran, for your talk. And thank you for the organizing committee for putting this gathering together. I wanted to mention a couple of things. One, I've seen a managed wetland organized by the Navy, the Pakistan Navy. It's on Manora Island, which is near Karachi. And so it would be interesting if the Army Corps of Engineers maybe wants to consult with the Navy, because the Navy is working on this as well down in Karachi. I wanted to ask Imran, especially these water filtration facilities. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about where the water is coming from. I understand you can filter it, but what is, do you have a tube well? What does the water supply look like behind that building that you showed us a picture of? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question. Now, so what we're trying to, so since there are no water supply lines coming in, we've tried to put in boreholes. So there are tube wells that we tried to set up. So the interesting thing in Farage Town and even Jamestown was that when we tried to look for water and we drilled for water, we found that there was no water in these places, a couple of places. Because of how the terrain is, how the geology is, and Dr. Qasim Jan is here, so we can ask him about how that works. And at the foothills of the Margalas, why is it that you've got a home that has been able to drill into the ground and they can access water, but the neighbors can't? So when we found this problem, the community suggested that they had a community center where there was already a working borehole. And in one of the cases, what we did was we had to extend a pipeline to it and develop a filtration plant around that. In the other case, a fresh borehole was developed and the filtration plant was set up there. In Jamestown, in one location, we could not find water through a tube well, but in another we did, and that's where we set it up. As I said earlier, I mean, this is something that we were hesitant to do, but unfortunate, and after talking to the CDA, we thought that this was the only way. In fact, the CDA said that if you won't do it, we're also thinking about doing something similar. It's because these communities have no way to get water at this particular time, and we can help resolve this issue of groundwater depletion via groundwater recharge, and we hope that will at least make it a sustainable source. Hope this helps.
Well, and let me just follow up by groundwater recharge. I presume you're going to be drilling additional wells, and then you'll be pumping water down into the groundwater table, or how do you propose to recharge the groundwater?
So there are a number of open areas in Farage Town, for example, and we're hoping that we can use the natural terrain to do it, and we won't be pumping anything down. So it has to be a natural process. We'll be putting in. So it's essentially a layered approach whereby you have the soil and you have some granular kind of a material, and then the water is able to seep down. In that way, it's cleaned up as well. But but again, we'll have to rethink that as well. We'll have to see ensure that there is no chemical contamination coming in.
Right. I'll just point out just quickly, again, thank you. I think that you illustrate the opportunity for young people who could study hydrology or hydrogeology. The groundwater story is not necessarily mysterious. If you have people who can study the existing wells, the existing water table studies, we have discovered in the United States many examples here in Colorado, where I live, also in California, where groundwater studies are being done. And it's a tremendous opportunity for young people, for students to to study water resources. And the issues about recharge, water quality, rates of recharging, these are challenges that are global, Australia, United States, Pakistan, everywhere. And it's a great opportunity for students to become involved in these studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, we have another question from our organizer, Qasim Jan. Please ask your question.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Imran Khalid. It's been a very wonderful presentation because it was totally focused on community use of water, particularly in urbanized areas, and these are important areas to pay attention to. So thank you again, Dr. Sahib. And let me remind you that we are now, all my colleagues have agreed that we put these papers in a volume. So there will be a publication. You start preparing a short article for us that we discussed earlier on. I have already obtained some funding for the presentation of the book, for publishing of the book, but maybe we will, I also had an invitation from Springer. So we are talking with Springer if there is a dual type of thing. But anyway, I come to just two things. One is that I'm sure you know, but the quantity of pollution that goes into the Rawal Lake is scary. I live at the edge of Banigala, and all houses refuse is going into the Rawal Lake. So I think that we need to talk about that with the CDA people, how to put a limit to it. How we do it, I don't know. But I think that people should be encouraged now that they have sewerage tanks in their houses are very near, rather than letting everything coming into the streets or into the streams. The other thing is that I was wondering, since there is a lot of water going through the lake stream and ultimately into the Swan River drainage, why don't we have some sort of water cleaning plant at the end of the Lay Nala or somewhere in the middle? This is something maybe they are thinking, but if it's not, kindly think about it. That there is a big water supply, and it may not be very easy to clean, but I'm sure that the modern technology would find a way. But finally, my other comment is that you said that the groundwater recharge, I know it's a very expensive activity, and intensive too. But you said that we are leaving it to the natural process, that there is grass and weeds and that water would ultimately soak down. This is fine. But I think in this natural process, in my opinion, the winner is always evaporation. There'll be too much evaporation and too little penetrating down into the earth and ultimately to the wherever. Why don't we have a sort of mixed solution? And that mixed solution is that in these big lawns or playing fields or whatever they are that you showed us in the picture, we have about 10 feet, 12 feet deep wells. They would not be wells actually. They should be a little broader, a couple of meters broad, and we have lids on them so that water can easily get into these wells and ultimately go into the ground, rather than leaving all of it on the ground, which, as I said earlier on, that evaporation would always be more intensive than percolation down into the ground. With these few words, once again, I'm very thankful to you for having been our speaker, and let's look forward to having a paper from you. Thank you indeed.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. Really appreciate it. I look forward to contributing that. So quickly, you talked about Rawal Lake. So WWF is part of a commission set up in Islamabad to look at what's happening at Rawal Lake, and we've just completed a study. It's not public yet, but we've got some of the initial findings, and we can share those with you. So when it comes to Rawal Lake, it's the housing estates in Banigala that are a problem, but also the town of Barakahu. That's a problem. The wastewater that emanates from the diplomatic enclave and Quaid-e-Azam University, and that it all comes. And what we need to do is to be, put up a treatment plant right before the water goes into Rawal Lake. At this time, Rawal Lake is highly contaminated. The second point regarding Lake, yes, we can put up a wastewater treatment plant before it empties out into Sawan River. But my contention is that it needs to happen. The wastewater needs to be ends up in Lake. So I say that if Leh was natural streams flowing through Vienna or London or New York or Denver, for that matter, you'd have cafes alongside. You'd have boating activities, and unfortunately here it's our waterways have become polluted. The communities that suffer reside right alongside, and that needs to be addressed. Yes, we need a wastewater treatment plant, but we need to treat it before it ends up in Lake. Let me also bring in my colleague Shuja Haider, who's joined us. Shuja, if you're here, please raise your hand, and if you can open your mic, please talk about the recharge wells, and perhaps see if our some of the suggestions that have come in and what we're intending to do. So I'd appreciate.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to add one more thing, as Mr. Qasim said, regarding that Rawal Lake. During that study, we found out that there are a couple of documents. CDA was working on that they are planning to install some wastewater treatment plants at different territories regarding on the Rawal Lake. So that is part of the planning, but I don't know where that is goes. Those are very old documents. So that is part of the plan, but not implemented yet. So that was for the Rawal Lake. And regarding the recharge in our project sites, yes, we have a few plans. For example, first of all is that we are trapping actually the rainwater at the household levels, and that will go to our 1,000 gallon tanks, and the overflow of that tanks will go to the open spaces in front of the houses. So that will work as first part of the recharge wells. Other than that, we have 5 parts at this moment in the Farage Town area. What we are going to do is we are going to install some filtration media in those parts, and that will trap the mostly the rainwater, and that will be used as a recharge wells. Other than that, what we have is that we are going to install some porous pavements while the landscaping of those parts, that will also increase the infiltration of the rainwater into our project area. Actually, the thing is that the project sites where we are working on is there is no proper aquifer in that area. There are only a few veins of water that if we drill exactly at that vein, we can affect water, otherwise not. We interestingly we had an issue that there was a mosque in Farage Town, and there was sufficient water. There was a filtration plant installed in that mosque. We drilled a bore around almost 100 feet away from that mosque where their bore was, and we drilled up to 430 feet, and we could not find water. So the mosques were able to extract the water from the veins they were having, but 100 feet away from that mosque, we could not find the veins. So there is no exactly a proper recharge aquifer in that area. So what we are going to do is we are basically using the parts in that area. Other than that, we are going to conduct some topographic studies in that area and also the hydrological models of that project area. So in that way, maybe we can find out where we have more potential, where we can install the recharge wells. Other than that, those parts that will help us to actually give us more recharge in that area. So this is our actually plan for this year. So that's all from my end right now.
Okay, Qasim How do you want to add something?
Just last thing. I think
Yeah.
Dr. Sahib, we should start talking with the CDA, rather at even bigger level with the government, that 2 places which use the maximum of fresh water are, number one, our toilets. And steadily, we should start thinking now about more modernized toilets. It's criminal to lose 2 gallons of water for taking away 1 kilo of waste. There have to be, and the Japanese have started, and I think that in the US also, and in some European places, now they have more efficient toilets, which take care of urine separately than the bigger waste. But anyway, this is something we should start talking on the national level. The other place which is using a lot of water is ablutions in mosques. I think we need to request all the Maulana Sahibans that the taps in their mosques should be allowing the minimum of water rather than putting big taps that uses too much water. We can't stop them. You know it and I know it. We can't stop it. But we can always go for the minimum, and that minimum is let the taps allow small quantity of water. So these are some of the things that we need to talk to these people and convince them that in their language, that water is the biggest gift from God Almighty, and let's not waste it carelessly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saib. We'll definitely reach out to you and work with you on this. Just wanted to highlight that ablution water is part of our project, and it has been a part of our project at the WWF in Lahore as well. So we've been working with the mosque and in developing plans to ensure that the water is recycled and people are using less and less of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, we have Bob. I think you can add some.
Yeah, thank you, Hazim. I just want to make one additional point. I think the establishment of water treatment plants is a massive expenditure and a very technical challenge. And I think that it would be very interesting to move the question up to higher levels. In other words, the Islamabad, whether it's the CDA or other organizations in Islamabad, it may be that you could get a governmental program to create a water treatment plant, for example, in the Leh Nala, someplace here in the United States, in Colorado, we have examples of this right now, where our communities have put in water treatment plants. They're very expensive, but they allow a certain amount of recycling of water, and they can actually take water out of the wastewater stream. They can reprocess and recycle it and blend it with groundwater and other water and reuse it. And I think that these are the technology exists. It is expensive, but if you look at it from a national perspective, it's a tremendous investment in terms of the quality of life for the people of the capital city. And I think that it would be interesting if perhaps the World Wildlife Fund, together with the Australian assistance, could perhaps make recommendations to the nation at a high level to investigate the engineering of some major water treatment plants. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
With the continuation of Qasim Jam's talk that the consumption of water during ablution, etc., we have worked on Hyderabad, Peshawar during our masters, and Gharibabad as well. Gharibabad is like the slum areas are not that much developed, but Hyderabad is a well-developed area. So we conclude that and the most developed areas, if water is available, then there is more wastage of water and their washroom during baths, during ablutions, or something like that. But while the people living in the slum area, they don't have such type of facilities, such modern type of washroom like something like that. So they didn't waste that much of water. So I think we it's a problem for the nation as well that they are wasting water. Uh, for during usage. So yeah, it's a problem, nationwide problem. Okay, so I will request all of you guys. I think we don't have any other questions. To turn on your cameras for a group photo.
Thank you.
Okay, we are done. Thanks. Thank